Kumaraguru College of Liberal Arts and Science. I extend a warm welcome to the speaker, moderator, our Zoom participants, our YouTube viewers. Also a very warm welcome to our media partner, Times of India, who's been working closely with us on many events and giving us a great support. And also our marketing partner, DigiGrad of Social Beat. Kumaraguru College of Liberal Arts and Science welcomes you to Conversation 5 on the theme, Infusion of Technology in Academia, in the webinar series on the New World Order. And we have had this series for the past 1 week, and we have received great positive responses about what they can take back. To set the context, academia is entering into new educational territory. The first frantic rush of transition from in-person to remote learning is almost done. Slowly, the faculty and the students have navigated and managed to make new routines, at least at the first level. But the question is, what comes next? When do we go deeper? And how do we go deeper? And how do we actually leverage this particular context to the advantage of the academia? And academia has been for a long time has been thinking that we need to transition into using technology, but we have always been slow paced. So my aspiration is that this situation should actually catapult us into the next orbit of using technology and moving forward. To talk about this particular theme, we have a fantastic speaker, Professor Dr. Vinesh Thiruchelvam, who is the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Asia Pacific University, and also he is the Chief Innovation Officer there from Malaysia. He has 20 years of experience in engineering education, operations, design, and project management in various industries, and has worked in several global projects in South Asia, Middle East, and Russia. He has also done teaching across the globe in several universities. And right now he is currently contributing to the Malaysian National Framework for Artificial Intelligence and is on their national panel. He has also played an advisory role in the Ministry of Education in Malaysia. And he has a PhD from University of Tun Abdul Razak University from Malaysia. And he has the professional license of PhD from Malaysia and CEng from UK. He's a very passionate technology person from what I could see from his profile, and very passionate proponent of technology as well. In fact, I should thank Dr. Vinesh for the topic, because this was a TED talk that he gave in 2018 on the same topic, and we borrowed the topic. Because maybe in 2018, it was a nice to have, but today it is a necessity. So thank you, and we welcome you, Dr. Vinesh, for this particular conversation. My pleasure to welcome Dr. Rajesh Kumar. He's an entrepreneur, co-founder of FACE, India's largest skill development enterprise. FACE enables around 1 million learners every year towards their first jobs. FACE has significantly leveraged technology to achieve the scale. And he devotes a lot of free time to mentor edutech startups. And he is an alumnus of IIM Kozhikode. We welcome you to the session as a moderator, Rajesh.
Thank you, Doctor.
And we see that this conversation is going to be between a practitioner who has touched millions of lives, who has scaled up to that particular level, and a person who's passionate and who knows the architecture to take this to the millions, and who's leading large university in Malaysia in doing this. So fantastic conversation is what we look forward to, because we will have definitely practical issues on what we want to do and a lot of aspirational issues of what we want to achieve. I welcome all the participants who has joined us. The format of the session is going to be, now I will hand it over to the moderator and the speaker. They will speak for, the conversation will go on for 40 minutes, and you can post your question and answer even as the conversation is on, but the question and answer will be taken the last 15 to 20 minutes. Please post your questions in the question and answer box. The chat box is a general conversation. So we will take the questions from the Q&A box. We welcome all of you again. Let's sit, listen, reflect, take action, and work towards an academia which is very forward-looking. Thank you, and I hand it over to Rajesh.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vijila. Indeed, a great pleasure and privilege to be amongst this august audience here. I again welcome each and every one of you to have taken time out to participate in this conversation. They say revolutions happen and take place on account of a lot of people coming together and, like, say, putting their thoughts and ideologies together for a serious, significant level of iteration. And we strongly believe the times that we are in right now is truly at a point where it is required and more of a necessity as against actually being a luxury, like how Dr. Vijila pointed out. Up until now, technology adoption was seemingly a good to have, but today, with whatever is the situation scenarios which are playing out, not just in a particular geography, globally, the entire academia, entire education space, education sector is required to, like, say, fast forward and, like, adapt to at a pace at which none of us actually anticipated. Whether it's a good or a bad development, there are both sides to the argument, the way we would probably look at it. While it's been very cataclysmic in terms of how this COVID-19 situation has impacted us humans, it has also thrown up a lot of avenues for us to adopt as well as adapt a variety of technological interventions that would have otherwise taken maybe, like, say, half a decade or so longer than what it is taking now. Whether we liked it or not, we've all been pushed into the spring. And now, as with any prospective, positive outlook person that would look at, we're looking at embracing it with both hands. Now, while we are on this journey, while it's been almost about a little more than 45 days in India that the lockdown situation is playing out, and how all of us in our own individual perfect lives have gotten upset because of a variety of inconveniences that have gotten, as academicians, both practitioners as well as I also see a lot of non-academic executives also on the panel, as practitioners or consumers of output of what academia throws out, we are also put in a unique situation. As much as the whole ideology of innovation is at the core of any new academic or enterprise initiative itself, it's also very, very critical that we also get to terms and hear from senior leader like Dr. Vinesh, who is at the forefront of innovation in one of the most leading institutions of the Asia Pacific region. Now, without much further ado, I'm going to pose the first question for Dr. Vinesh, and I would like to hear his opinion and views on it. It's going to be a conversation style, like how our host, Dr. Vijila, presented. My request would be, if you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A chat box. We would take them as they come along, post the initial bit of 30-35 minutes of conversation. Professor Doctor, my first question, I'm sure I'm going to just pick it straight out of the agenda that has been set. You've been witnessing a variety of these situations, being at the leading front of a variety of these innovations yourself in your own personal capacity as an administrator as well as an academic. How do you think, while broadly everybody understands that things are changing for good, what exactly is your read on how things are changing at this point in time, accelerated the way that we are all seeing and perceiving, both from a practitioner's perspective as an academician as well as an administrator? It'll be good to hear from you, Doctor.
Okay, thank you, Rajesh. First, let me thank Kumaguru College, Dr. Vigila and team for giving me this opportunity to speak today. The current situation with the pandemic and how that has impacted the different disciplines, different businesses in the world is something which is not new anymore. I think the last 50 to 60 days, a lot of businesses have gone into a paradigm shift in terms of how they want to continue business as usual. So with regards to education, we also have that common notion where we have to have business as usual. So in terms of business as usual for education, it is the form of operations in how and in what way we want to deliver education from what it used to be to what it can be for the future. But what was anticipated a few years ago, especially when Dr. Vigila mentioned that I did a TED Talk in 2018, a lot of preparatory works were already in place in terms of trying to infuse technology into education. And it wasn't something new at that point in time. It's definitely not something new today. But what has happened is all of a sudden we have gone live. And this, it depends on which institution is ready with the proper infrastructure, with the proper competencies in order to not only adopt and adapt, but in this case, to roll out operations to suit what would be called as business as usual in the education sector. So in terms of technology itself, it's definitely an enabler. And in this case, over the last 50 to 60 days, it has become a true enabler because it not only helps you when you go into this situation where you are remote, you're no more on campus, you are not having your normal face-to-face delivery. You will have to do it remotely. And the best method, of course, is via online digital delivery. So the technology that comes into play, it is actually an enabler that strengthens the delivery remotely. But one of the plus points of technology is that it will have you embark on an errorless method of any form of application that we use to deliver the education. So this technology, there are many fronts of it. There are many different versions of it. It is how you do your selection, how you do your adoption, and how you adapt to how you can suit the specifics for your own delivery based on your own institution and all the stakeholders within the institution itself. And very important two areas of stakeholders is the person who's delivering, who are the lecturers, and the person who's receiving, which are the students. There's a lot of growth in this this area of application of technology, simply because the content that in the programs and the offerings that we have, the content itself has grown. There's been too much demand from the perspective of content. You have, like in Malaysia, you have the Malaysian Qualifications Agency, which is the authority and the agency that approves and monitors and ensures quality is in place for any program that is being offered. Then there is the professional bodies who also monitor certain programs, certain disciplines. Then you have the employers. Now the employers today are not the same employers of 10 years ago. The employers today do not actually want to have training on the job. They want to have a graduate who's on the job, ready to execute. So which means that whatever is previously defined as training or apprentice or a new graduate trainee to be going into a company, all that forms of training, that content is now expected to be part of the curriculum. And that is a large demand. And then within that circle, you have other stakeholders, for example, the operations team, the management of an institution. You have also the students and the academic team as well. So if we take the entire circle of people who will be responsible for adopting technology, it has to tie in with the demand, and the demand is the growth in content, which is growing rapidly, and which at the end of the day, any student that comes to any institution, when they leave the institution, there's only one thing on their mind, which is to get a job, and that job can only depend on what has been fed to them over the 3-4 years that they are spending in an institution, and that's very important. So having the infusion of technology, what it does, it actually helps them grow. It upskills them in terms of getting to that goal, which is to graduate on time and to getting a job. So the content within any curriculum, all the applications within any curriculum, the education that we are floating out, those applications have gotten wider. The amount of tools and software and different apps that we are infusing into curriculums, it's amazing. But there's been a lot of support, and it depends on who you partner with in terms of industry partnership, who can also help you leverage on the type of content that you intend to develop using technology. One big area now is actually the Industrial Revolution 4.0. It's not new, it's been there for a long time, but it has now put a very strong footing in education. So everything circles around 4.0 because the employment market is also looking for areas of expertise within IR 4.0. So the Industrial Revolution 4.0 is another factor that plays a part in the application of technology in education. And that is growing. So the acceleration growth in technology for education is so rapid that it's hard to keep up with technology. It's not a 6 month thing. It's definitely not a 12 month thing. It's easily between 1 to 3 months. So this continuous check and balance with the type of technology you want to use, how you strategize, how you plan it out, is very vital and pivotal in the growth of any institution for that matter. And speaking from experience, coming from an institution that is very tech-based in terms of our offerings, we have to set a benchmark for not only ourselves, but for other competitors within the region. And that is what we have done over the years, trying to sort of change conventional methods in order for it to be more attractive, especially for the new millennials. So the new millennials look forward to types of education which is not only attractive, but which can sort of be sellable to them, tying them to things which are interesting to learn about, and also to getting into that end goal, which is to graduate on time and getting a job. And I see a lot of less reading, more visuals, more applications. They want to be. These are the millennials who've been exposed to tech from a very early age.
Right.
For them, it is at a scroll of their fingertips. They are able to read or see something on their devices any time of the day. So they are also embracing a much easier lifestyle. So technology in education has to sort of serve that purpose. Yeah?
Right.
That's basically what I think it is at the moment, and that's how we at our institution have embarked on infusing technology for education.
Sure. Just a follow up on that, Doctor. So when you hit the nail on its head when you said that eventually all education should lead to employability and thereby adapting to what the new norm today from an employer's perspective is going to be. Everybody is expecting a digital native student graduating out of our institutions. That pretty much puts a lot of onus on us as academics and ecosystem players in terms of gearing up students. I'm going to just split that entire theme into 3 components predominantly. One is like you rightly pointed, the whole content itself is very important, right? I'm splitting the content into 2 components further. One is the knowledge elements of it. Second is the translation of knowledge into skills. Where for certain of the streams that has already been very well in place. For instance, if you look at the IT industry, the entire skilling ecosystem has been largely been digitally driven. Whereas on the other end, which is a lot more brick and mortar centric, there have been a lot of challenges around that, and things have still been very slow on the uptake. So my observation and my question thereof, Dr. Vinesh, is to how do you see the traditionally non-digital industry focused programs, which could be in the areas of arts, it could be in the areas of sciences, the really non-core tech driven ones, or for that matter, even in the areas of, like, say, business. From your experience, how do you anticipate them changing from a knowledge and skill conundrum, or specifically in any other paradigm that you would like to articulate us?
Yeah, I mean, just like any tech-based curriculum, even if you talk about the arts, what has been going on for the last, well, it's been the last 5 to 6 years where there's a lot of emphasis that's been put into the areas, and I like to emphasize on the 17 areas as developed by the UN, which are for the Sustainable Development Goals. You know, these 17 areas, it ranges from zero poverty, zero hunger, to even areas in terms of consumption and production, climate change, life on land, peace, and basically the balance and equality between male and female. So if you look at these 17 areas, right, if you focus on these 17 areas, and you take the COVID situation now, moving forward, what has happened over the 5 or 6 years, there will be a very, very strong deep dive emphasis on these 17 areas. So not only does the tech sector have to embrace this, but I also foresee the arts and sciences, social sciences, looking in this direction as well, because there's going to be a lot of development, research, and programs being created and designed to sort of hit targets within these 17 areas, because these are the 17 areas that will feed jobs of the future. And that's very important, see. So I see even in arts or social sciences, there'll be a lot of focus in these 17 areas. And I think the UN's Sustainable Development Goals is a forefront in terms of putting strategies in place for curriculums and institutions that want to offer education for the future. There cannot be any change in terms of moving away from these 17 areas. I think what has to be done is basically to leverage on these 17 areas, because they have already been outlined for us. It's very easy. These are the current problems, the current areas that need solutions, and whatever we do in education will feed into people that needs to be upskilled in order to find solutions in these 17 areas. Yeah, and I think that technology being an enabler will not only be as a norm, as a layman who would think that technology is only for the IT or ICT or engineering sector. I think technology will play a strong, impactful strengthener for even the arts and the social sciences, simply because of everything being digitized, and we are moving in a digital era, whereby based on the digital demand, there will be a lot of rapid movements in terms of how academia will shift itself. You know, if you look at the social sciences, you look at businesses, you know, the introduction of digital marketing, the areas of finance, whereby fintech has now become a very prominent area to study and also to embark on. And even move away from engineering, where a lot of rapid prototyping is happening, 3D, 4D printing. You know, even in ICT, there's analytics which is happening. A lot of AI will be used in all sectors, including arts and social sciences as well. Now, if you want to encompass everything, you have to ensure that your infrastructure is secure, and you have a good cybersecurity element always on top of your agenda in terms of anything that you want to strategize for the academia. And I think having a very solid infrastructure is the base and and foundation to ensuring that technology can have an easy flow onto any form of delivery for any institution.
Sure. I hear you, Doctor. I think it's also very pertinent the way you mentioned about those conventions that are being required to make sure the successful outcomes are anyway assured of. Now, just taking that point of argument a little further. Now, academic institutions have always served or rather thrived on the physicality of them being large institutions, physically being able to do a variety of things. And academic institutions don't just serve the purpose of disseminating knowledge. Up until at least a couple of months back, when things were as per the previous normal, the idea of going to a formal education institution or going to a physical institution was not just too restricted to academic pursuit in terms of consuming knowledge and developing skills alone, because there were always supplementary institutions that could just serve that purpose. Academic institutions also served a lot of critical life skill building aspects of it. In terms of, like, say, thriving in situations that are, like, say, difficult to handle, to social interactions, to at the very base level, all the way up till helping students cultivate their leadership skills, and a whole host of futuristic but very relevant skills pertaining to them becoming productive and economically gainful once they're out in the world, both from a societal perspective as well as from a work and professional perspective. In the new norm, how do you, because we are also, like, say, gearing up for, there are differing signals that we get from, at least in India, government and statutory bodies, where for some institutions, some set of institutions, they're talking about resuming academia, at least for the final year students, as early as June. And some of them are still suggesting that the new academic intake from post-class 12 or pre-university is going to commence only in the month of September, is what some of those directions are. But things are evolving, and nobody, I'm sure, will put all their money on betting on as to when we will resume. But we need to, like, say, continue, move on, and, like, say, start our academic processes. From what we at least see is a lot of schools in the K-12 space have started doing their regular academic interventions using digital classes and all of those things. But maybe at a school level, it may still work. But given that our overarching ideology around higher education institutions is not just knowledge and skill, how do you see the whole social element of physical infrastructure-driven play changing or turning around in the current situation? The online universities looks like it's becoming a reality sooner than we anticipated, regulatory things notwithstanding. What's your take and view on that, Doctor?
Yeah, I mean, the online universities, or the e-universities as they call themselves, they're having a fun day, because they are for them, it's true business as usual. They will not change their model. But one thing we have to eradicate is the notion that you don't need an education to succeed in life. The other second pointer is that you will always need at least a physical institution to come to develop not only skills in the form of practicals, but also skills in terms of communications, and skills in terms of face-to-face meetings, skills in terms of working in a team. Now, all of this can be done remotely. It can be done online, but it will not reach to the level of purpose or in terms of the skill sets that are required for the real job if it's done fully remotely, online, or to any digital manner or method. Now, having said that, there are a lot of things that are happening in the industry which are also remote. Now, there's an important point here if you take globalization. So you could be working on stuff around the world, but not be based in that city or that country. So that's the reality. But there's also another factor that is important, which is the factor of developing a purpose. So in terms of education, we must always create an interest for education. So technology is an enabler, but technology is also the creator of that interest in education. And that's what we must make as an important pivotal factor in any type of business for education that we are going to embark on, or we are going to modernize from anything conventional. And that's important. What I see is that there was already a working shift in terms of trying to transform from conventional methods to the new digital methods. But what has happened is, because of the current pandemic situation, it went into a live mode almost immediately. There were a lot of challenges faced by many institutions. We also had a few teething issues in the beginning. But as long as you put your goals up front, you will definitely reach them. There were two important demands which I would like to focus on. One is, as I said earlier, job requirements. And the second one is the attraction to study. Coming up in the future, even if after this pandemic gets over with, I think coming to class, coming to a physical classroom or coming to a physical campus will no longer be 100%, because what we foresee is that there will be a mixed mode that will take over education delivery. There will be more digital deliveries allowing for more coverage. So again, I want to tie into the coverage content. So you cannot cover the entire content based on demand. And this digital application now, or technology for that matter, allows for a lot of the coverage to be done within the given time. The other one is the ease of time to study. I think the new millennials, they don't want a very structured approach, no more the 9 to 5 kind of approach, because even the working world is changing. It's no more a 9 to 5 thing. It is very dangerously now a 24/7 thing. But I think the ease of time to study will also be a platform for the ease of time to work. And it's up to the individual and how they manage their learning time. And it serves as a purpose to the future, whereby they will have to also manage their working time. Yeah, I think these are basic fundamentals that will change for the coming future. I want to strive a bit onto in-classroom activities, in terms of the adoption of technology. I think what will happen very rapidly is the use of blended and flipped classroom methods to teach. And I think that is the only way forward in order to meet that second criteria, which I said, which is about attraction to study. And if blended methods for learning or flipping your classroom does not happen, whether physical face-to-face or even on a digital platform, then you are going to lose the student, because the student will lose attraction. So the attention span has to be maintained, and that can only be done via these two segments of blended and flipped.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be a common change from face-to-face to online. I think there'll be a mixed mode. What's happening now is fully online, but post this, there'll be a mixed mode of online and face-to-face sessions as well.
Right. In fact, you hit that point very well, Doctor, when you said that it's more about helping our students and learners realize the purpose of education itself. And to a large extent, given the way things are playing out and how we are still dealing with an attention deficit driven generation, which is very easy and fast to lose interest if you're not able to really engage. I think the message there is, while things will change for good in terms of being able to give them what the students and learners want in a way and digitally enabled manner, the crux will still be around kindling the curiosity and giving students and learners the purpose. Would you have any specific instances of how you have been in your personal capacity or as an administrator or academic, which may be, because from what I also understand, I'm also reading the comments and questions as they flow in, a lot of academicians whom we also personally interact as part of my regular work, they have a big challenge around how do you digitally engage students. I think while the subject matter area per se is very strongly aligned, because instead of a classroom lecture, we have quickly fast forwarded and started delivering the whole content, at least the theory aspects of it, and wherever possible, the simulation aspects of it online. The challenge which in the past was around, because of the physicality of the class the students and learners were kept in rapt attention, purely from a consuming the knowledge perspective. That seems to be quite a challenge. Would you have any personal examples or specific guidelines or inputs that you could share with our academia colleagues here in terms of how do you keep the students and learners curious? How do you engage them, make it more engaging? Because at the end of the day, if the students' attention is on what the delivery is happening, technology challenges notwithstanding, whether it's a little flaky in terms of internet connection or not, they would still tag along is what a lot of us opine. But Dr. Vinesh, if you could probably throw some light on how do you go about keeping a learner engaged in the new world? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think you stress on a very important keyword, which is engagement. I think engagement is important, whether it's online, face to face, and digital engagement is more challenging because you don't really see the other person. You can if you have your video on and all that, but then to the masses, sometimes you, in order to engage with them, you don't have that personal touch. But that personal touch can be developed in a digital or online session. It depends on how and what type of engagement activity you want to deploy. Yeah, it can be in the form of online discussions, comprehension of questions, note taking, for example. The student centeredness is very important, and we used to think that student centeredness can be only done on a face-to-face basis. But if you apply the correct activities and you design them to encourage collaboration, then you can embark on a very fruitful social learning enterprise. Yeah, and that's very important. Maybe I should share some of the methods that we have deployed. We had a 7 digital classroom strategy that we rolled out. Basically, we have the live classroom sessions online, where students watch live stream of lectures and tutorials during class time and practice what they have learned through traditional university assignments and schoolwork. Yeah. Then you also have the pre-recorded class sessions, which is also important. It adds value. And this is where you can leverage on that extra content that you need to deploy during that semester or that given time frame for any subject or module. Now, students watch these pre-recorded videos of lectures and tutorials. They also include reading of any materials. And these materials now, instead of reading, can be converted into a video play, and which is easier, more attractive, and they can learn from these tutorial videos as well. The third deployment that we do for the classroom was to have more discussion sessions, and that's important. So the lecturer or the instructor will assign lecture videos as well as other videos related to the day's subject, and then this class time is then devoted to discussing what they had watched on the video, so they can explore and they can go deeper. They can take a deeper dive into the subject. Of course, there's also online demonstration, whereby you can demonstrate certain practices using the online method, and then students follow the same at their own pace. There's also role play as instructors, yeah. So where students are assigned to record practice role play activities to show how competent they are and how much they have understood the subject matter. Now, these role plays also include a bit of blended learning, whereby you teach your own classmates, so you take over the class based on what you have learned. Of course, we have the virtual classroom, which is now we also have virtual exam halls, which have been deployed at my institution. So, an online learning management system is important to be created, ensuring that learning materials are accessible and not only accessible during a 9 to 5 period, they are accessible any time of the day. Now, even the consultation hours are online. They can be scheduled, they can be non-scheduled, but the accessibility to the teacher, instructor, or the lecturer is always there based on a common communication platform, which both can agree on, time and date. And then there's the online group learning, which is just basically students come to class, they team up to work together on an assignment. This format encourages students to also learn from one another. So that entire teamwork, co-learning practice is there. They're able to learn the right answers. They're able to leverage from each other's knowledge based on what they have read or the videos they have seen. Now, this is also what we team as peer-to-peer learning. And I think these are the 7 areas where we have deployed, which have worked very well. If I'm going to deep dive into how we have designed virtual classrooms, basically. Yeah.
Sure. That's very helpful, Doctor. In all of whatever we talk in terms of our core of academia, it's eventually revolves around the faculty, the facilitator of the particular program itself. Now I'm going to just fast forward and take it to requesting you for a few very critical skill alignment areas that our faculty members need to have in terms of gearing up for the new normal. Everybody understands that they need to embrace technology, but I believe that's a very sweeping thing, and it will help if you could probably call out specifically what areas from an academician's perspective that they should cultivate. If there are any specific tips you could give in terms of resources that you could consume or go through, that will be very helpful, Dr. Vinesh. If you could highlight on at least 3 to 5 areas that they should, each of our academic colleagues should necessarily adopt, and pointers on what could be a starting point, what level of proficiency they could go to. Because as we see, we are dealing with digital natives from a learner, millennial, zennial audience, which is a digital native audience. But unfortunately, there is always seemingly the gap between students and the learners, faculty and the students. And how do we go about bridging that gap? That'd be a very interesting take from your experience, please.
Yeah, so maybe I could share from a top-down approach how we basically streamed and rolled out what we would like to define as our remote online digital learning strategy. Yeah? So what happened was somewhere middle of last year, tying into the vision, mission, and goals of the institution, we had put in strategies in place to ensure that the digital learning methodology will roll out in a certain given time. And the target was to make digital delivery embracing blended and flipped classroom for the start of 2020. So what we did was we put the strategies in place, we planned it out, and we moved on into the next form. So I led that entire that unit, I would call it, yeah, in terms of strategizing and planning and complying with our VMGs, yeah, ensuring that we had the correct elements, the correct spices in place to cook up a good meal, a good tech meal. So what we did was we also ensured the selection of the technologies. So there are various technologies, various platforms out there, which was the correct, most comprehensive platform or technology to be deployed was another research and development area. We worked very closely with the technology and infrastructure team, which is a separate unit within the university, sharing different thoughts on which would be the best platform or technology to be deployed. Once that was in place, what we did was we had to have to reach out to the masses, right? You got more than 250 academicians on board in the institution. To reach out to the masses, we had different schools within the university. So we appointed digital champions. So every school had academician who was a digital champion. These were the most switched on lecturers, instructors, any academic for that matter, who were not only technology savvy, but they had passion for technology, and that was very important. We put them into the entire phase of getting trained, developing, upskilling themselves. Yeah, so we partnered with with Microsoft, we had AWS, Google, you name it, all the different technology players. We partnered them, we set sail these digital champions onto getting themselves trained. And then we moved on and let them pilot content development for their own subjects. So they had developed content for digital delivery for their modules. All of this was done within the base of about 2 to 3 months, yeah, from August, September, and October. But in tandem, we also, last year, late September, we rolled out the pilot run with the digital champions. So there were 9 of them. We rolled out 9 subjects, and some champions even took more than 1 subject. So they did more than 1. And what we did is we reached about 16 subjects in that last semester between September to December, whereby all these 16 subjects had been digitally delivered. And it was successful. And the only point that we did not execute were the exams and assessments. The exams and assessments were still conventional. What happened in January this year was the next phase. We used the digital champions as the train-the-trainer method. They were training other staff members. So we have about 256 staff members in APU. And the champions, the 9 of them, were training these other 250 over lecturers. And that training process was finished in January. It started in January and was finished in February. And starting end of February, coinciding with the training, was a full rollout. So every single lecturer or instructor at APU was supposed to roll out a full digital delivery of at least 1 subject under their wing. And while that was going on, the pandemic happened, and all of a sudden we went live. So we were to a certain extent very ready, but to a certain extent not ready in total. But we went live within 7 days of the lockdown. Within 7 days of the lockdown, where we were under the movement control order, within 7 days, APU ran all their subjects, every single curriculum, every single program, remotely via online digital methods. And it's simply been put that we could only do that because we've already completed our strategies, plans, trainings, and we had already done the technology selection in terms of platforms and technologies to be used. And having the digital champions as the frontliners, that helped them as the go-to people for anyone that had a doubt or needed further clarifications, because we were all going remote. We were all away from each other. Now, the other point is, it was also important in the training to ensure that the lecturers or the instructors knew what was required. So a lot of emphasis was put into sort of using case studies, using online videos, using illustration and graphical content, using gamification, games-based teaching, using practical examples. Not only you do the practical sessions in front of the students from home, but you also have collaborative discussions in them with the students while you adopt or roll out the practical samples. And then there was also the hands-on instruction. And all these are the clear 7 areas which are important in terms of delivery methods. But you also, in terms of any academician, you have that entire flow of online remote learning, because it does not only encompass the lecture. There's also assessments which have to go virtual, have to be remote, and then how you monitor the performance of your method of delivery. So now what we have done, we've also sort of embedded analytics, whereby we measure the time and the energy spent by the student with the instructors or the lecturers, that's being measured in terms of performance, in terms of their attention level. There's also important stakeholders that can help you support the delivery, which are the infrastructure people within the institution, making sure that it is flawless, errorless, ensuring that you have enough bandwidth and stuff like that, and there's no disruption. And then the materials which have to be uploaded, the tutorial sessions which have to be recorded, attendance which has to be taken, and the performance of the student which also being measured in terms of their feedback that is given. And the feedback that came within the first 2 weeks since we went fully live was quite important to basically ensuring certain corrections that had to be made. Having said that, we have also now done an online survey with all of our students. And from the survey, we can also measure our performance. So it's a two-way thing, we have to measure our performance with the students, because at the end of the day, they are sort of the customer who's receiving the education which is being given to them. From a skills perspective, I think once as an institution, if you have selected your platform or technology to be used, and then these technologies or platforms have to be shown from a usability perspective to all the instructors and lecturers. Basically how you do student registers, how you do repository of your class materials, basically how you do submissions and marking, whether it's report-based, whether it's formative or summative assessments, how you check for plagiarism now that you're remote, what platform do you want to use. There are things like Turnitin which you can use in terms of repository. There's platforms like Moodle which can be used. And these are things that are important. As an institution, we have decided and we have gone on with Microsoft Teams, and that has been a huge player in ensuring that we have smoothness in our delivery. The reason why we chose it, being non-biased, of course, is because it was a one-stop center for student engagement. There was the communication platform, the chats, the calls, the video calls, which were seamless. The collaboration platform in terms of live lecture, tutorials, online discussion, group work, that was also seamless. And that sort of kept us abreast with the smoothness of the delivery, which was important. And I think those are the skills, and the adoption of technology is one uplifting skill for the delivering party, which are the instructors and the lecturers per se.
Sure. Just since in the interest of time, we'll probably get into the Q&A piece, Professor Doctor, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Jump right in. Professor Gopinath has on this question. What are the areas that we need to be exercising caution around when it comes to delivery of learning across technology platforms? Are there any critical do's and don'ts or precaution that you would provide in terms of how to be, or rather, what are the areas that we need to be, cautious about when we're delivering content using technology?
Okay, from an institution and infrastructure perspective, one caution area would be the security of your system or the infrastructure in place. I think that has to be very well organized and dealt with the technology and infrastructure team of the university or the institution or the college. So having good cyber security awareness and practices is important, because over the last 2 months, if I use Malaysia as a context as an example for that matter, the cybersecurity breach in Malaysia has gone up by 82%. So I think having a very secure network is important. That's from an infrastructure perspective. In terms of the teaching perspective, I think it's very important in order to develop content which is which is very attractive. The other thing which I've always said, you can have a physical classroom, which is, say, for example, on a normal day would be 2 hours. Now, if you're online, you don't have to replicate 2 hours, because the attention span on looking onto a screen cannot be 2 hours. You get tired after 7-8 minutes. So it's very important to ensure that you have content which has been developed on mixed mode, which allows for a bit of reading after, reading before, video before, video during, a bit of offline, whereby they go and meet their classmates and interact and engage. And that's important in terms of the content which you're going to develop. So I think if you focus on content, you focus on a very secure infrastructure, and then you will have seamless delivery. Those are two key areas actually.
Sure. That's helpful, Doctor. Across board, a lot of questions seems to be coming around the practicality of technology connectivity in an Indian context. I see. Would you have any views around that in terms of while technology adoption seems to be like, say, an accepted norm, but there are a lot of challenges that learners from their receiving end as well as academicians. I'm talking about the very interim right now, over the next couple of months before we resume physicality of the operations itself. Do you have any tips around how could we solve for this whole bandwidth and internet connectivity issues that would you have had? I'm sure even in a Malaysian context, there would have been a lot of rural area students who would be remotely required to log in and learn, but because of their connectivity issue, they may be facing issues. Are there any tools that you could suggest for that, please?
Yeah, so, right. So what we have basically told our students, we had three important areas actually. One is, what were the devices and tools that they were going to use for learning? So we made it very clear to our students that from a live session, you could go down to the use of a mobile device. You did not need to have a workstation. But to embrace digital education, we told them that as a minimum, you must have a laptop. You don't even have to have a desktop. A laptop will work fine. But when we did our survey, we found out that more than 67% of our students were actually viewing or engaging in the live sessions using their mobile devices, which means that they went into a very comfort zone whereby mobile device was enough. And truth be told, a mobile device, if you're watching a video, you're watching a live teaching session, or you even want to engage, the mobile device works. It does work, but you cannot do any practice on it. It's not helpful. So that was one thing that we put in place very strictly, that you should be on your laptops, but as a minimum case, you can also use your mobile device in terms of live sessions where it's a one-way input maybe. From there, we went into another area. From there, we developed issues whereby certain students did not have tools and devices which were not up to the mark in terms of specifications for online remote learning. Easy way to put it, they were not strong enough in terms of capacity to meet online learning. So that had to be solved by the students. On the teaching perspective, we also had that issue. We had all of a sudden, because we went live, so there were cameras that were not working. There were laptops for some of the instructors which crashed. So that had to be deployed, and that we ensured from an institution perspective, a replacement was done within 24 hours. Now, moving on, we also had on the student side bandwidth issues. So there were connectivity lapses, not only from a bandwidth perspective, but also from the platform perspective. There were times where it will stall. There were times where it will just stream, but there was no continuity. So those were things that our technology infrastructure team took on board and had further discussions with the platform provider. But on the student side, yes, there will be issues such as bandwidth, and I think that is something that has to be solve. But one method of solving that problem, which we have deployed, is we ensured that every class session was recorded. So they can always go back to the recordings.
Sure.
And they can learn post the classroom session. And that was very important. The third problem that we had was because we have students from 133 countries, we had time zone issues. So if, for example, we had a class which started at, say, 8:45 a.m., but if the student was in, say, Saudi Arabia, he would be 5 hours behind, and that would be a bit too early for him. And what we did was, we have that student-centricness whereby we have to have that form of empathy. So we also ensured that the recordings were there, whereby they could catch up based on the recordings. And then classes which were very important because of assessments or because of anything that has to do with, say, teamwork engagement, we ensured that they came on live. So there was a lot of communication going on between student and the lecturers in ensuring that everything which under the context of materials and learning and notes and slides were all given and accessible by the students. So these were the three areas that we were sort of facing challenges, which we have overcome after the first 2 weeks of the
one concluding question, Professor. A lot of queries are coming around specific tools and platforms that you've used, starting from, like, say, class administration to lectures to plagiarism checks. If you would want to, like, say, call out any specific tools that you would recommend for our audience here, it'll be great and helpful.
I think the tools that we use, it basically, there are many tools that you can use which are available now online. Yeah, I think the creation and the type of tools that you use is based on what content you're delivering. I spoke about the repository which we use, Moodle, and the platform for teaching which we use, Microsoft Teams. But beyond that, for gamification, for example, we use Kahoot, and that sort brings an excitement during class. And I think that those are the main two areas. But if you talk specifics, there are tons and tons of things that we can use. And if I can share with you some of the methods for flipped and blended learning, probably you will appreciate more. Some of the things that we do, some of the technologies that we are using, for example, areas whereby we can have skill-based scenarios, problem-based scenarios, issue-based scenarios, speculative scenarios. There are many methods that we can use, and for me to share, there are things like Flipgrid, which are video topics and discussions where you can use them. You can use Quizlet, which are basically flashcard based. For note taking, you can use OneNote. There's also Sway for interactive reporting. There is many tools for interactivity. For example, Poly, Mentimeter. Within Microsoft, we have Microsoft Forms. Yeah. Presentations, you can use Sway, Prezi. These are quite commonly used. Proofreading, you could use Grammarly, you could use Hemingway. These apps are free. They can help you with proofreading of any documentation. There are many others which you can use in terms of preparing your work or whenever you're doing something online. There are things, some of the applications we use are, like, for example, Answer Garden, which is a tool for online brainstorming or polling. So a lot of lecturers use this as a real-time tool. There is Animoto that gives you the ability to write short 30 seconds videos for any lesson.
Sure.
There is Audio Note, which is a combination of voice recorder and notepad that captures both audio and notes for any type of student collaboration. I could go on and on. There's concept board, which basically allows for facilitation of team collaboration in a visual format. And there are many others, it really depends on which one suits you and which one is easy to adopt. Yeah.
Got it.
And that's basically, yeah.
Yeah. So one grand finale question. I think that's also been posed multiple times across this chat as well as Q&A. What's your view as an academic leader? Are there, or rather, let me phrase it this way: what are the solution, or rather, are there solutions, or if there are any, what will these be, in terms of particularly engineering and physical science related areas? How do you get the practice elements of it done digitally? How do you move practice to be made and executed effectively online or digital ways? Have you seen any tools in your experience, or do you still feel there will be a physicality element that needs to be dealt with once physical classes resume? What's your view, Doctor?
Right. I think that's a very good question, because that is something that we've been trying to mediate. If I use engineering as a classic example, a lot of the laboratory sessions or the practical sessions have to be done on campus. That was the notion from before. It's more of a touch and feel, and it's important that the millions been spent on equipment, laboratory equipment, to be known that they are being used physically. But when we went on to this online learning, what we have designed is actually virtual laboratories that tackles certain portion of the practical sessions, but it cannot tackle every practical session. So what we have done now is we have put together a very detailed supportive write-up to the Ministry of Higher Education to showcase that there is a need to go back to campus. And one of the reasons behind the need to go back to campus is the laboratory sessions, which have to be conducted on campus, but under very strict standard operating procedures, whereby there is still social distancing during these times. But those practical sessions can only be done on campus. So what we are doing right now is that we're using virtual labs for the lighter, more electronic, more electrical based subjects. Even in the areas of robotics, we are using a virtual laboratory session for robotics. We partner up with the industry, and we can actually conduct those sessions remotely. Anything which is software based obviously can be taught remotely, ensuring that we have the VMs, the virtual machines are in place, and also ensuring that the students have the capacity on their workstations. But a lot of the what I would classify as the hard, down and dirty type of laboratory sessions, where it's workshop based, tooling, machining, where it's a lot of it has to do with chemical reactions, oven usage and all that. That has to be done on campus, and we are definitely going to not allow that to be digital based. It has to be in the form of face-to-face practical sessions. So we put it aside, and when we go back to campus, when we're allowed to go back to campus, the students will have a catch-up program whereby they can complete these sessions on campus.
Sure. That's very helpful indeed. I think we have kind of overshot our scheduled time, but it's been very, very amazing listening to you, Professor Dr. Vinesh. I will pass it back to Dr. Vijila to resume the session and take it to closure, please.
Thank you, Rajesh.
Thank you.
I am Leo Gertrude from the Department of Visual Communication. Technology can become the wings that will allow the educational world to fly far and faster than ever before if we allow it. Professor Vinesh and Mr. Rajesh, your discussion and sharing of thoughts gave us the wings how far the educational technology is getting and get infused with the present scenario. Kumaraguru College of Liberal Arts and Science like to thank our speaker, Professor Vinesh, and moderator, Mr. Rajesh, for your valuable thoughts and discussion, and like to extend our best wishes. We had around 300 participants for the session, and like to extend a special thanks to them. We'd like to thank our media partner, Times of India, our technology partner, Social Wheat, and our marketing partner, DigiGrade. Dear audience, a quick reminder on our tomorrow session. The topic is a new wave of innovation. The speaker is Mr. Ramanan, Additional Secretary, National Institution for Transforming India. And moderator will be Mr. Vishwanath, co-founder and CEO of Forge. The session will start at 11 a.m. Please do check our website for details and registrations. Till then, stay home, stay safe. Good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.